Hi, I'm Nikki Lowe, and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show, where I share insights and interviews that support women to combine their family, work, and life in a more successful and sustainable way. Today, we're talking about a subject close to my heart, and I know close to the heart of so many other women. It's a subject that still has a degree of taboo, secrecy, and shame attached to it. Sadly, so many of us have navigated this journey feeling alone or isolated, and that's the topic of infertility and miscarriage. I experienced secondary infertility and was told that I might never have another child. After multiple recurrent miscarriages, I was actually blessed to give birth to my daughter nearly 4 years ago now. But that experience never leaves you, as I know so many of you listening will know. And that's why I'm delighted that today's guest is here to shine a light on this difficult topic, helping others to know that they're not alone, that there is support out there. My guest is Dr Belinda Coker, and she's an experienced NHS GP and medical director with a wealth of experience in fertility and women's health spanning over 20 years. She's also the founder and CEO of Your Trusted Squad, a boutique IVF and fertility concierge service that supports and empowers high-achieving, ambitious women who have difficulty getting pregnant to reduce the stress and overwhelm of their journey, navigate their fertility treatment, and conceive a healthy baby. For years, Belinda has suffered from debilitating pain and fatigue from her endometriosis. Her symptoms have worsened since her fertility journey began 11 years ago. She's been pregnant on 4 occasions and lost each baby in the first trimester. She found that having fertility treatments, grieving for the loss of her babies, and repeated failed IVF cycles whilst working full-time were some of the hardest challenges she faced. Therefore, she's genuinely passionate that women feel supported during their fertility journey and have a better experience than she did. Belinda and her husband are now hoping to start their family with the help of a gestational surrogate, and she's here to share her journey, her insights and her expertise with us today. So let's dive in and welcome her. So welcome, Belinda. Thank you so much for joining me on the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Very welcome. I know that this is such an important topic, and I'm just really, really pleased that you're here to share it with us. And I'd love to start with your story. Can you share the journey that you've been on with us, please? You know, how long you've been a GP and how long you were a GP before you started your fertility journey, and what that journey's been like for you.
Yes, I've been a doctor just actually 20 years in August. For 20 years. And before I became a GP in 2009. So by the time I started trying to conceive, I'd been a GP for just under 2 years. Okay. So when you're training to be a doctor, I initially started training in reproductive health, so in obstetrics, gynecology, and then I worked in I say sexual health, reproductive and sexual health. And then before I started my GP training, and at that time it was very popular for doctors, female doctors, to try and take maternity leave, become pregnant actually during training, because the maternity leave benefits were better under the NHS. Once you become a GP, you're essentially in independent practice. So the benefits can vary for each doctor. Yeah. So you can still be entitled to NHS pension, but not necessarily the same maternity leave policies or even sick leave policies that the rest of the NHS will have. But that didn't worry me so much. I just wanted to finish my training. And so probably about a year after I finished my training is when we started the journey. And it's important to say that I pretty much since I was 10 years old, I've always had very painful periods. And I was told that I probably had endometriosis pretty much from when I was think I was 11. I'd seen a few gynecologists at that time. And over the years, I'd been on various types of contraception, really as a form of treatment. So this was the first time I'd ever been off contraception since I think I started some form of pill when I was, I think, 12 or 13. So very early. And yeah, so I was now not on contraception, but I was experiencing, every year I started experiencing problems with ovarian cysts. Actually, I'd had that for years. And I think kind of straight, probably about 6 months or a year into that, I was admitted to hospital because I'd had a ruptured cyst. And I mean, there's a horrible story behind it, but basically I ended up having surgery on the ovary, which I think damaged the ovary, as it does. If you have surgery on the ovary, that's kind of one of the complications. So whenever I've had treatment, that ovary has never really worked. So just to summarize, now I've been it'll be 12 years in August since we've been trying to conceive. I have had 9 fresh IVF cycles and 1 frozen embryo transfer. I conceived once through IVF and 3 times spontaneously. I think spontaneously, it's not right. Naturally, just without assistance. And unfortunately, we lost all of those pregnancies. So nearly 12 years in, and we don't have any children as yet. But now we are expecting a little boy in August through a gestational surrogate and an egg donor. So it's been a journey of learning about alternative routes to parenthood and kind of relinquishing a lot of control across the way.
Incredible journey. And I can only begin to imagine the practical and psychological kind of aspects that you've had to navigate with that. So I thank you for sharing that, because I know that you're here in kind of a professional capacity, but it's deeply personal as well as you're sharing that.
Yes, it is. It is personal, but it's also a huge part of me. For a long time, I didn't really want to talk about it. I kind of tried to push it away as it wasn't part of me. It was something that I was just going through, and I was going to get through it and then, move on. But obviously, because it's been such a huge part of our lives, so say my husband and I, it came to the point where it was like, well, to know Belinda is to know infertility and to know that she's lost children. And so I wanted to talk about it because it's an important part of me. And so it is very personal, and some people really don't understand why I talk about it, and some people are very supportive of it. And particularly in culture, African culture, these type of things aren't talked about almost at all. But for me, it's just it's part of me, but also I believe I can help people, and that's why I did set up Trusted Squad, your Trusted Squad, and it's something that I feel very passionate about going forward. So yeah.
Well, as I said before we hit record, I'm sorry that you've had to navigate that journey, but it is amazing what you're doing with the experience that you've had to help others. So at what point in this journey did you decide to set up your Trusted Squad and kind of found this?
So I started your Trusted Squad initially as a health information blog, really to help kind of spread the word about the amazing kind of digital health tools, the apps, the online services that were available to help people to improve their health, help improve and monitor their health. And I started it off, but I knew I wanted to focus on infertility, but I was quite scared of doing it. It was just, I didn't really know how to do it. And also, it was just the first time I was really kind of talking out about it. And so I did my introduction and I talked about my history of infertility and endometriosis. And then as it was along the way, as I started to be on Instagram, I started to gain my confidence in being able to talk about it. And then I was asked to speak about my experience on the Imperial Business of Healthcare podcast. And that was the first time I ever talked about it, and I was trembling. I was trembling the whole way through, just feeling really vulnerable and exposed. And then I think after that, it became so much easier to do. And that was how your trusted squad, in a way, that's it. So it evolved, but the actual service that I started was really out of finding a purpose for all that had been going on. And I was like, well, people say, oh, this is God's plan. Oh, no, this is God's plan. It's meant to be, it will all work out and whatnot. And then at one point I just thought, I'm, not God, but how can I make this worthwhile? How can I give this, some meaning and something positive to come out of this pain? Because at the time I didn't know whether we were ever going to have children. We've been trying surrogacy for a few years. It just didn't feel like, although I was always hopeful that we would have a baby, it just felt like I didn't know whether it was ever going to happen. So yes, your trusted squad is really to give the kind of the sense of purpose to my journey, but also to make other people's journey just so much better than mine. And I say that I have a mission, but actually there's going to be so much more to what I'm offering right now. Over the years, I'm hoping that, well, maybe not even over years, but it will be over years. I'm hoping that it will evolve to really actually help people from early on in their journeys, to completely transform the experience of infertility, and hopefully that people won't feel so overwhelmed and stressed like so many of the people I know who have encountered that experience.
And as I've said in the introduction, and as you're aware, I've struggled with my own fertility journey, not to the degree that you have. And that just walking that can feel such an isolating and disempowering experience. The fact that you are bringing a community together and providing resources, providing support to empower people along that journey, is incredible. And the fact that is giving you meaning as well to your own journey. And I had somebody on the podcast a little while ago, and he's a guy called Elliot Ray, and he talks about fatherhood because he suffered with PTSD after the birth of his first child. And it was a very taboo subject because obviously normally it's about the woman and the journey she's going through and not necessarily the father. And he made this statement, which is your mess is your message. And I loved that. And it's, that's what I'm hearing with you. You're finding your message through the journey that you've gone through.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
So
thank you.
How actually does your trusted squad help people navigating this infertility journey?
Yeah. So there are a number of ways that your trusted squad has evolved to do this. Excuse me. First is that we provide trusted health information about infertility, fertility health. And our information is PIV tick accredited. So we have gone through kind of quite a robust process to confirm that we are a trusted health information provider. And so you can find information on the health articles, and we also direct you to sources that are also trusted. So if you check out the blog, then you can click on what's there. So a lot of people kind of Google for information, and you kind of come up with your first page of information. You don't know really what to trust. Apart from really NHS, you're not really sure. And that was very much the feedback I got when I first started. So that's part of what that health information is to do, is to help you find trusted sources of information. And then the service that we actually offer is to provide independent and unbiased assistance to help you navigate your journey. So it's a combination of ability to have a support session, to be able to talk, to provide, to be able to talk about what you're going through, to be able to get emotional support, but also to be able to have any questions answered with either an evidence base or not an evidence base. So you can find and source information that's relevant for your particular situation. We can talk about, what's help you be able to get relevant information that helps you make decisions, informed decisions about your care, help you find and select services, help to tell, so it can provide kind of a selection of services that may be relevant for what you need, help you build your team. I talk about a squad, but help you build the team of support around you, and just help you understand and navigate your treatment. So whether you're going to have NHS treatment, help you find out whether you can see funding for it. But yes, if you have some people want to make decisions about the embryos, even about just some of the logistics of their journey, it just gets just lots of different queries along the way. And sometimes you just want to ask somebody about those questions. And that's essentially what we're here to do.
Brilliant. And so when you talked about there are potentially different members on this squad, what are the potential members? And I imagine it will differ for every kind of couple that are going on this journey or individual that are going on this journey. So what potentially are some of the members of the squad?
Yeah. Anybody can create their own squad. And I think probably the longer you are in the journey, the fertility journey, the more likely you are to create a team of people around you. So initially you may just use your clinic and your GP. But I do encourage people particularly to understand that IVF treatment or any fertility treatment is tough, not just physically, but also emotionally, and to get the emotional support. And that emotional support can be from people that you trust, that are friends or family, but often it helps to have people that have been through the experience. It's just a different level of understanding. Or to have professional support, and that might be from a psychologist or another health professional that specialises in fertility. That could be a GP, that could be a nurse. Or you may want to be part of a group, a community group, or a local support group, or an online group. And so your squad could be a few people. It could be your fertility nurse, from your fertility clinic, plus a psychologist, plus an acupuncturist if you want acupuncture, or you may just have two people, or you may have a nutritionist and a masseuse, your urologist or andrologist. So it just really depends on your particular situation and your particular needs. You don't want necessarily to overwhelm yourself. You want to have people that are going to help you, but also that you feel you can lean on and get that help that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm imagining the more support you've got on this journey, the better. And as you say, you may not be aware of some of the support you need. So I'm imagining part of your role is to signpost and help with that.
Exactly. That is part of it. Sometimes you're kind of learning as you go along.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure it out. Well, how can I get the help? How can I get the help? And you're kind of Googling it. And actually Google can only tell you so much, because you have to ask. You have to ask the right question. And it does help to have, part of what I do as a GP is signposting. It's really important part of being a GP, helping people navigate, helping people refer people to treatment. And so it's very similar. Those skills is what I use in your trusted squad, to be able to understand what you need, and be able to help you find, the services that will help you.
And I think it's so important that, as you say, it's independent, it's unbiased, because I know on my own journey, I ended up going to see a Harley Street doctor to help me, and spent a lot of money that actually, in hindsight, I didn't need to spend, but didn't know at the time. And I was clinging on to hope and, just following that path, and to have somebody that was kind of independent and expert to advise is so important. Yeah,
it's such a different journey experience to having NHS treatment.
Yes.
Because you are dealing with the private sector, and in the private sector, healthcare professionals do want to provide. Well, it's not just health professionals, even. You get all kinds of people. The number of people that can offer or say they can offer help is huge. It can be overwhelming to know who has qualifications, who has the skills, the knowledge. And unfortunately, some people can play on our vulnerabilities. We want, at the end of the day, most of us will do almost anything to have a child. And it's, and it can be so difficult. I mean, the amount of money I've spent on various treatments, ones with an evidence base and others, just with the hope of it working. And so that's, you're right. It can be, you can actually spend a lot of money on very unproven or treatments, or people that actually just might take a bit of advantage of your vulnerability. And that's why it's good, because even though I'm not a GP in this service, I am still a GP and I'm still a registered doctor, and it's very important for me that obviously I still maintain that reputation, and I still have these duties and ethics to abide by. And so that's part of why I say, okay, it's independent, it's non-biased. But I've been where you have been. Well, I still am. And these are these are options that, could be safe and trustworthy. And I'm also still here to provide that help along the way. So much, and because it's been such a long journey, I feel like I'm still learning. I still learn as we're going along. So I've had to learn to relinquish control. I think I said that I've been I started off as a GP, then I trained. I became started an MBA, completed my MBA, became an executive medical director and board director of a company, healthcare company, and I've always known that I have to work hard at to achieve my goals, basically. So particularly being Black, particularly being a woman, I've always known that had to work probably harder than others. And so I thought that the same kind of ethos would have to be applied to becoming pregnant, to this fertility journey. And so I did everything, all the research, I was kind of having my own little plan and then working with the doctors. And actually I realized that IVF isn't, it isn't a guarantee. I think I knew that already, but, there isn't a guarantee of success. But also there was only so much I could do. I could optimize my health, but I could not will this baby, to be here. I could not control the fact that I was having miscarriages. I could have as much treatment as possible, but there were lots of things that I knew that I couldn't. I had to let it go. I had to, and I had to understand that I had to love my body. I had to realize that at points I did hate my body. And then I had to say, Belinda, you've only got one body. And you have to love your body. And, your body is amazing. It's for you. You are here because of it. So I had to realize that it wasn't my fault, and I had to learn to love my body.
And I can feel like, as you're speaking, I can feel the emotion rise in me, because I can recognize a lot of those lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, as a lot of my listeners are, highly capable, highly professional women that are used to getting stuff done. And if it's not happening, you just work harder and try your best, and how that has served them in their lives. But actually, when it comes to a scenario like your fertility, as you say, when there is so much outside of your control, that's a really, really hard place to be in. It can leave you feeling a bit helpless, because your strategies that you've normally used to great success in your life just don't work. And you're like, well, okay, what do I do now? And I remember those feelings incredibly well, and the feelings of somehow I was failing, that, as you say, and I remember feeling that about my body, is failing me. And to then be able to transform that into, as you said, loving my body and recognizing actually all that it's done for me is one hell of a journey to go on.
Yeah. And it really can impact your self-esteem. Mm. And then that can impact other areas of life, and it can impact on work, and how you feel about yourself, and how you then, as I said, tackle other challenges. So yes, those are kind of the lessons that over time I've had to really, really unpack.
Yeah. And it making me think what you said earlier about actually how much of a taboo that this can be. And I imagine there's a taboo, as you said, around your cultural system, but also your professional system, because I imagine as a doctor navigating this, there's must put another layer of that into it.
Well, when I was actually in the thick of having the treatments, as I said before, I was an executive in a healthcare company, and I didn't actually share what I was going through. I didn't tell any of my colleagues on the board. So some of I'm still employed. So I do have employers. The chair is still effectively his employer, but I didn't tell them that I was having miscarriages or that I was having fertility treatments. I was scared. I was very scared of losing my job. I was scared of being pushed out, and not being, almost being felt that I wasn't committed to my work, which I very much was. I'd worked really hard to get there, and I wasn't, going to let what was happening affect my work. So I used to take annual leave for my D&Cs, when I had my RPC. And being a GP would have been so much harder, because I was working in out of hours. So actually I worked in evenings, weekends. But if you're in general practice, you start, your surgery 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10-minute appointments. And you can't really just you can't take annual leave in a week. You can't do that. You usually have to go 6 weeks notice. So that would have been very hard to do if I'd been in a GP practice, as I was, I was in a healthcare company, and I could generally have a week, I could give a week's notice and be able to have a surgery. And that's what I do. And then I'd return back to work, and then just get back to work, or I'd have my treatments before work and then go in. And that was a lot of pressure to put on myself. And looking back, it totally wasn't worth it. Really wasn't worth it. Because if you're that worried about being pushed out of a job, you could still be pushed out anyway. It's almost what you could do to yourself is just so self-destructive. And it might be okay if you're in the journey for maybe a year, but it was years.
Yeah.
It really took its toll. So, can't really actually think I've just digressed completely.
No, not at all. And I think that is such an important piece to highlight, because this journey is difficult to navigate enough. But when you've got the added difficulty, which I imagine just deepens the trauma of, actually, I'm worried about my professional credibility and how I will be perceived. I've worked damn hard to get to this position and feel threatened. And I imagine there's layers to that, culturally, society, and depending on what organisation you're in. And I know there will be people listening to this that will feel that. What I'm really pleased to hear is that there are more organisations that are looking at fertility at work and providing their employees with the support that they absolutely need to navigate this, with compassion and with support. And so I think you sharing that, and I can't imagine how difficult that is so important for people who might be line managers that are listening, might run businesses, or who are going on that journey themselves to know, I'm not alone. And these are the type of issues that go alongside the personal journey.
Exactly. And you're right. There are now many more companies and organisations that are raising awareness about fertility at work and helping support organisations to improve the support for their employees. And that's huge. And I'd love to see where we are in 10, 15 years' time, because I think it does take a while to embed. And I still see their problems with pregnancy, but for most people, actually, they will feel relatively supported when they are actually pregnant and going through their antenatal and then postnatal period. And I'd love to see that for people going through fertility treatment or experiencing recurrent miscarriages, for sure. And now that Nikki Aiken, MP, she's timetabled her bill to discuss her bill in November to actually improve, to add workplace legal protections for people who are having fertility treatment. And really interested to see how that will, how that will go. And that would make a huge amount of difference to be able to feel protected whilst you're having fertility treatment.
Absolutely. And I suppose you've got a unique lens, and maybe, there are other women out there that I'm sure that are doctors that have had a fertility journey, but how do you think being a GP and being a doctor has impacted your journey? Because that's a particular lens that you're experiencing it through.
Yes. So yes, I was a GP, and also I'd had this background of training in obstetrics and gynecology for years, and then sexual and reproductive health. So I'd worked in early pregnancy units. I had, in fact, I used to perform the operations for the termination of pregnancy, and for miscarriage. And I used to counsel patients for termination of pregnancy and also during miscarriage and actually deal with some, care for patients throughout their pregnancy, whether that be pregnancy complications, high risk pregnancies, and also, late miscarriages, stillbirth. So I had a real understanding, clinically, and I'd also seen how people, the couples, the emotion and the suffering that they had gone through on the wards as part of the process, without being too graphic about it. But I'd also seen how doctors It's interesting. I just felt that doctors seemed to have more complications. I don't know why it was, but it was maybe because I worked in a high-risk unit. So I used to see a lot of high-risk cases, but sometimes I felt like, oh, if I'm a doctor in hospital, am I going to be, in trouble? Which was odd because I'm sure that wouldn't have been the case, but I did worry about it. So I think I always had this kind of extra vigilance, hypervigilance, about the whole process. And then on top of that, I had the experience where I had been in hospital. I told you about the ruptured ovarian cyst, but actually I had been in hospital for days and I'd been ignored for days, and in fact the nurses lied to me and said that there weren't any doctors that could give me painkillers, and it was they wouldn't give me painkillers, and so I was in a lot of pain before. At the time, we didn't know I needed the surgery, although I should have gone for the surgery to have a diagnostic laparoscopy. And in the end, we had to leave the hospital and go to a private hospital. And that's where I had the surgery. So it was really awful experience. So all of those type of things kind of impacted on on the fertility journey, and how nervous I was about. I didn't want my experience as being a doctor. I didn't want to be a doctor treating my infertility and my miscarriage. And sometimes if I would tell them, then that's what would happen. And I didn't want to be doing that. But I also was very aware that I wanted to still be involved in the decisions that were being made. So I would attend with all of my records with me, that type of thing. I would kind of, attend as very serious and kind of with my planned questions, and it's eventually the way I would talk, they would know, or they would ask if I was a medic. But originally I wouldn't tell them. I tried because I wanted them to treat me like a patient. So it's hard not to try to be the doctor as well, but then I don't want to be the doctor either. I want to receive the care, and so there is that kind of, I don't know, there is a kind of a little bit of a conflict there. Whilst if I went there with absolutely no knowledge of the system, no knowledge of the biology and the treatments, I don't know how different my whole experience would have been at any stage.
Yeah, and I suppose you'll never know because you can't just partition that part of yourself off, can you?
Yeah.
But I imagine that's what gives you so much comfort and insights for your clients, is combining all of those different parts of you and the experiences that you've had to help others.
Exactly. It is a unique, I suppose, lens, because if you don't have any medical knowledge or medical background, then you can read everything, but maybe not understand how everything works, how biology actually works and how physiology actually works. And so you're reading and you're learning facts, but not necessarily the process. And then the science is one bit, but there's also the system, and understanding the system, the healthcare system, the private healthcare system, the NHS healthcare system, it's such a fragmented system. And there are so many different types of healthcare professionals, and even nutrition. You've got the dietitian, you've got your nutritionist, and then also now they've got nutritional therapists that aren't even qualified in the same way as nutritionists, and they're not qualified in the same way as dietitians, and you don't, that it can be really mind-boggling, just the sheer volume of healthcare professionals that are out there.
And the conflicting information, isn't it? Because, it can often be completely kind of polar opposite what people are telling you, and then it just is hugely confusing.
Exactly. It is hugely confusing, and you just want to do what it takes to have a baby.
So what would you want people to know that haven't experienced infertility and miscarriage? Maybe there's a friend, a colleague, a boss, or someone who is navigating this. What insights or advice would you give them?
So I think what many people won't understand who haven't been through it is that infertility isn't just not having a baby, or just trying to have a baby. Along the way that infertility affects so many aspects of life. It isn't just having a physical treatment. It's a huge form of grief. Going through the process, you encounter grief in so many areas, especially if you have failed treatments. And there's so much to learn and understand and juggle and navigate. And then there's also living with infertility. There's also living, going to work. There's also living, mixing with your friends. There's also attending baby showers, your christenings, any kids' parties, and that feeling of isolation, feeling left out. And so the more your friends will go on to have children, and have several children, that can also feel hard. And I think a lot of people won't see that because they can't feel it. They can't feel what it's like, the pain that it feels, and the fact that you lack the control. So I just think I'd want people to learn about what it's like to live with infertility. Understand that it's not just having a baby. So that's why when they say it's about having a baby, they just say just adopt, because they think it's just about having a baby, but it's more than that. And actually, the processes of going through IVF, going through even just finding out, trying to find out the reason why, trying to get a diagnosis, then having any fertility treatments that you have, then having a failed treatment. That's it. It's all really tough to, tough to take. So can they understand that and then go through an adoption process? It's not that straightforward. Do you know when you say just adopt, you actually know what adoption entails, before you say it, or, just get a surrogate? Do you know the legal implications of adoption and surrogacy and how it impacts on the child? Because a lot of people just don't think about that. So there's just so many areas, and it's more complex than I think a lot of people make. So I just encourage people to learn about it, learn about what it means, learn about how it affects people, learn about why people feel so isolated, listen to their experience if they want to share it with you. But also there are so many. Now, if you go on Instagram, you'll be able to understand, learn more. People talk about it. People share videos. There's no reason you can't learn about it. And I think you talked about how common it is. It affects so many people that that it's not like learning about, I don't know, sickle cell disease or something. It's not like learning about a kind of a different health condition. This is affecting so many people that around you. So that's it. I just want employers, friends to just understand and learn more about it, so they can say things that are helpful and that don't hurt. Many people can say things that hurt without intending to do that, but yeah, that's what can happen.
Oh, you've put that so brilliantly, Belinda. I think you've really given an insight in there. And I think that whole, as you say, just having a huge amount of compassion, because there is part of the journey that you will be completely unaware of, that, it's just part of kind of you'll be unconscious too. So I think you've said that brilliantly. So if there's just one thing you hope someone who's listening to to this and what you're saying takes away, what would you want that to be?
I think if you are listening and you're going through infertility, you're living with infertility, fortunately there's so many things, but actually the main thing is to listen to how you feel, acknowledge how you feel, and don't feel pressured to do something that makes you feel uncomfortable, that doesn't feel right, should I say, that doesn't feel right, because so many people will give you advice, and so many people will tell you what to do all the time, and it can feel really overwhelming, and you can question yourself and feel that you're doing something wrong, that it's your fault, but it really isn't, and so if you want to look up a particular treatment, or if you want to go in a particular direction, just make sure that it feels right for you if you go through it. So yeah, I think that's the one thing.
Great advice. So how can people find out more about you and your work? Where would you direct them to?
So firstly, an Instagram page, which is at Your Trusted Squad. And then the website, which is www.yourtrustedsquad. You can download a free guide on IVF treatment, and also your fertility consultation with your GP. So they can give plenty of tips and a checklist to help you if you are going to see your GP and you're unsure what to ask or what to expect. And yeah, if you sign up for emails, can keep you posted with updates over time. But I'd say the main one is Instagram, and we're also on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your journey and your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the chance to talk. Nice.
If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, please share it on social media and with your friends and family. I'd love to connect with you too, so if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk, you'll find a link on how to do this. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review and subscribe. You'll be helping another working mum find this resource too. Thanks so much for listening.